Everyone, welcome to Philosophy 307, Philosophy of Law. My name is Jimmy Alfonso Lacan, and I'm your professor for this semester. I'm really excited about the class. I put a lot of thought into it as I built it, and I hope you enjoy it. So I'm going to share my screen and give you a bit of an overview of the class, where you can find the things you need to find, and give you a heads up on the resources. So give me one second. So this is the student preview. As you can see here, the title of the class, Philosophy of Law 307, and this is the spring semester. So this is where you can find a Dilbert cartoon there. This is my contact information. My name. Um, my name is Doctor, Professor, my title, but you can just call me Jimmy. It's not that big of a deal. My email is my first name and last name, jimmy.lacan@asu.edu. And I don't have set Zoom or office appointments hours, but I am happy to make Zoom appointments for students who have questions, want to delve into the material, have issues or questions or worries about their assignments, etc. As you can see here, the required text and materials are all on Canvas. They're free. I know you all pay a lot for tuition and books and other classes, and philosophy is a very old field in many ways. So I try to prevent or try to avoid assigning um, expensive materials whenever I can help it. Uh, as you can see here, our class, by the way, I live by a lake and those are geese honking. I apologize. Um, so you can see here at number 3, Canvas, that's where we'll meet, we do our work, where you can find the assignments, group work, midterms, and finals. Um, and this is a philosophy of law class. We presume that you've done a little bit of philosophy work prior. But basically, the class is focused on two large questions that really unify the field, and that is what is law? Like when you say something's a law, what does that mean? And then why does law matter? So as it relates to morality, rights, enforcement, civil disobedience, etc. And we're going to get into different kinds of theories of law. We're going to get into different like theories of punishment, what punishment is supposed to accomplish, etc. Philosophy of law is a huge field, though, and we are only barely going to touch on some of these themes. And in fact, the learning outcomes in number 6 will give you some indication of the things we're going to cover. For example, the relationship between law and morality. We're going to talk about substantial disagreements in the Constitution as it relates to law and constitutional liberties, in particular, things like transparency and secrecy. How much do voters and citizens deserve to know? How much should they know? We're going to get into various theories of law. What is it to be a law? There's quite a dispute among philosophers on that. We're going to understand how property relates to economic systems, prosperity, and freedom. We're going to talk a little bit about it, not a lot. Like I said, we're going to touch on all these things. We're not going to get into details. We're going to talk about U.S. law and its moral foundation as it relates to Native American tribes and nations and their unfortunately tragic history in this country. A little bit. We're going to talk about it. Uh, we're going to analyze arguments and issues that arise sort of generally in philosophy of law, like we do with any philosophy class, and develop our critical thinking and reasoning skills along the way. So course requirements are here. There are 100 points possible in the class. The discussion board posts are worth 30 points total. I think there's 6 of them worth 5 points each. And it requires you to respond to the post or the question and then reply to a classmate. There's also take-home midterm and a take-home final, obviously because this is an online class. And by the way, all due dates are in Arizona local time. Arizona is strange because we don't do daylight savings. So just Google and ask Google what time it is in Arizona if you need to know. And here's the breakdown of grade distribution. Pretty simple. I don't do extra credit, so please don't ask. So please don't ask. Um, I have, as I'll talk about in a second, I have a very generous late policy, and everything typically is posted in advance. So if you think you're going to have issues with planning, you're going to need extra time, etc., I would advise you, if possible, to plan ahead. So there's no extra credit. Please don't ask. Number 7, we get to topics and the reading material and the assignment. So we have 7 weeks, manageable. The first week is why not break the law? We get into topics like morality and why you should do the right thing, what obligation do you have to follow the law even when you don't have to, et cetera, et cetera. Um, these are key questions in both moral philosophy and legal philosophy. And then weeks 2 and 3 are dedicated to two contrasting and mainstream theories of law. One's the natural law theory tradition, and the other one is legal positivism. We're going to get into those, and you can kind of see the different intuitions pulling in different ways depending on what counts as a law. Week 4 is dedicated to theories of punishment. People often assume punishment, like going to prison or fines or that kind of thing, that punishment is only about retribution. In fact, it's often conflated in many ways with revenge, which is just asinine and wrong. But there are 4 different theories as to what punishment is trying to accomplish. Some of them are complementary and some of them are exclusive. But in any case, it's very interesting to get into. And then week 5, we get into property, property rights, the commons, and the Constitution, how the Constitution relates to property rights. There are provisions in the Constitution to protect property rights. People think property rights, or I think the misconception is that property rights are about excluding people, and that there's part of that. Um, Part of owning property is to exclude people, but it also solves a lot of problems, environmental, resource attribution, or resource distribution, etc., that are solved when you assign property rights. So we're going to get into that and how that can make people more freer, I think freer and more prosperous and deal with what philosophers and economists call the tragedy of the commons. Week 6, we talk about Native Americans, property rights, and reclaiming land and how you morally and legally balance that with the needs of both Native American populations and American citizens who are here, regardless of the sordid history of our land. It's morally and legally pretty dicey. It allows us to talk about how property relates to prosperity and freedom, and why Native Americans are right to make those sorts of arguments, but why these arguments require nuance. Political bumper stickers and talking points don't cut it, and we're not going to get into that. We're going to get into a very detailed and deep dive into that whole issue. But it'll still be scratching the surface because, like I said, these topics are very, very deep, well developed, and very interesting. And the last week is my favorite. It's called Secrecy and Transparency in Constitutional Governance. We talk about the pros and cons of secrecy and transparency. One of the common misconceptions in liberal democracies like the United States or Canada or Germany is that transparency is often an unalloyed social good, meaning the more transparency, the better. And as it happens, there's definitely value to transparency, but you can also have too much. So, and I don't just mean the obvious stuff like national security secrets, that sort of thing, although that's definitely in the mix. Um, so this include discussion posts and midterms, as you can see. You'll find them in the assignments. Um, and then we have the usual academic dishonesty disclaimers. Please don't cheat. Uh, I mean, I guess you can try. It's your education, but I wouldn't recommend it. And if I catch you, it's not going to be good. I don't really want to play. I think college students often think professors are out to get them. I really don't want to be out to get you. I like giving good grades. I love giving an A plus. I really do. I enjoy giving good grades to students. I don't want to be the ogre and I don't want to be the cop. And actually, most professors want to be teachers. We have a passion for our subject and our topic. And we want to convey that passion to our students, not play cops and basically parents or guardians. So please don't make me. I don't want to. Um, on the rough side, number 9, my late work policy is pretty generous. So late assignments can receive up to 50% off until the end of the semester. Now, some people ask things like, can I turn in part of the assignment for 50% off? No, this applies to the whole assignment. But if you miss the first assignment, you can turn it in the last day of class and still get credit for it. These policies don't apply if you have official medical documentation. I don't take points off. But I still think it's pretty generous, and it can help cushion you against a worse grade. So you still have that cushion, just in case. And number 10, just to warn you, we will be talking about some sensitive material in here. We'll be talking about Native American rights. We'll be talking about property issues. We'll be talking about secrecy and transparency and all kinds of potentially punishing people, prison. There's a lot of stuff. So just be warned. It's sensitive material. It's the nature of philosophy. If you find that offensive or in any way distasteful, then I would recommend taking a different class because that's what we're going to target. Number 11, and the last one really, is that the syllabus is subject to change. So what you're seeing now is not necessarily set in stone. However, I don't really change it unless it's a catastrophic emergency or something, unless it benefits students. So giving you more time, giving you more points, etc. So I try not to change things in a way that make things worse for students, but I may make things change. I may make changes that benefit students. Like if I said more time or more points, something like that. But it may come like if Canvas is down or something, it may not. It may just be that we have to make changes. It's very unlikely, but it's good to have a policy in place just in case. So this is the syllabus. I kind of went roughly over it. You can find the assignments here in the assignments tab. Um, this isn't set yet, so don't take this serious. I'm still working on this part. But that's where you'll find the assignments when they're done, is in the assignments tab. And then modules is really where you want to go. So modules aren't done yet either. There's going to be one where I add this video that I'm making. But in the modules, you'll see your week 1, week 2, week 3, 4, 5, and 6, and 7. So you'll see all the weeks with the titles. And then you'll have your discussion post assignment. You'll have when it's due. By the way, I haven't changed this yet. Some of these need to be updated, so don't freak out when you see these dates. This is just an example. So this is like a week 1. All the weeks are going to be like this. Or you have your assignment for the week, whatever that is. Could be midterm, final, or discussion posts. You have the PowerPoint for the week, and this is the PowerPoint I will use during lecture if you want to go along with it. I haven't posted them yet, but the video lectures will be right underneath. You'll have your reading material. Um, these are two things that these like different versions of the same thing. So, and then what I'll have posted often is, let's see, do I have it here? Yeah, right here. What I'll have is it's like an AI generated podcast uh, that talks about the reading materials. And I've listened to the podcast and they basically get it right. So what I do is I generate them and then I tweak them to make sure they get the details right. Um, this is well the unfortunate thing. A lot of students think artificial intelligence is super smart, and in very generic tasks, it's very great. Like if you ask it for a recipe or to do something for you that's like very generic, AI is great. But on very, very specific details and deep dives on things, not nearly as much. It gets a lot of details wrong. Um, so this is what I would caution students. Your reliance on AI should be very, very careful because it can bite you in the butt, especially when it gets into nuance where there's not a lot of data to train on. But in any case, so I made sure it was accurate, but it's a different way of thinking about the material. So I've tried to include lecture that I give along with the PowerPoints that I use, along with reading material and a AI generated podcast that goes through it in a different way. So if one approach doesn't help with understanding the material, another one will. I'm also available. I try to be very, very responsive to emails. So unless I'm sick or something, I get back to students within 24 hours. So if you have questions about the material, don't feel free to reach out too. What I'm trying to do in this class is provide as many different kinds of resources as possible to make sure as many students are able to access the material, meaning it doesn't go over their head, it's not super dense, it's not abstract. I'm trying to explain it in a way that is accessible even to non-philosophy students. So I hope you enjoyed the class. I really enjoyed putting it together. I'm looking forward to going through these topics with you. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.